90s superstar Pamela Anderson's career has been marred at times by tabloid headlines. Well, she's now in her 50s, and she's telling her own story.
Pamela Anderson once lived a life filled with massive paychecks, luxury homes, and global attention. At the height of her fame, it seemed like nothing could touch her success. But fortunes can change faster than anyone expects, even for the biggest stars. Over time, a string of financial challenges began to unravel the life she had built, forcing her into choices that shocked fans around the world. Now at 58, Pamela Anderson's reality looks far removed from her Baywatch era. How did one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces lose so much? And what does her life really look like today? A childhood filled with secrets. Pamela Anderson's childhood looked nothing like the glamour the world would later associate with her. If anything, it was the opening chapter of a life shaped by chaos, fear, and survival. She was born in Ladysmith, British Columbia, a quiet coastal town that even today has fewer than 9,000 people. Back in the late 1960s, it was even smaller, one of those places where everyone knows everyone and nothing much happens. Yet from the moment she arrived, Pamela carried an unusual footnote of history. She was born on Canada's 100th birthday, earning the title of a centennial baby. For a brief moment, people even believed she was the first baby born in the entire country that day, though the CBC later confirmed someone else had beaten her by a short window. At home, though, the story was far less celebratory. Her mother, Carol, worked as a waitress, doing what she could to keep the family afloat. Her father, Barry, had a reputation in town, and not a good one. He was known as a hard drinker, a gambler, and a man with a con-man edge. Pamela would later struggle deeply with relationships, and much of that pain could be traced straight back to him. Barry worked as a chimney sweep and played poker on the side, but alcohol ruled the house. Fights were constant. Pamela and her brother learned early how to disappear, sneaking off, hiding quietly, waiting for the shouting to end. The arguments weren't just verbal. Physical violence was part of daily life too. Eventually, her mother left him, then went back, then left again. Each time they landed in small, rundown apartments, surviving on welfare and barely scraping by. Life was unstable and exhausting, but even that wasn't the worst part of Pamela's childhood. When she was just 6 years old, something far darker began. A babysitter, someone trusted by the family, started abusing her. For 3 to 4 years, the abuse continued in secret. Pamela was repeatedly told to stay quiet, to tell no one, and despite being a child herself, she did everything she could to protect her younger brother from the same fate. The trauma became so overwhelming that at one point, she remembers picking up a pen and trying to stab herself in the chest just to make the pain stop. In a moment of raw desperation, she looked at her abuser and said she wanted them dead. The next day, the babysitter died in a car accident. For years afterward, Pamela carried an unbearable weight. As a child, she believed she had somehow caused that death, that her words had made it happen. It was a level of guilt no child should ever have to live with. As she grew older, the damage didn't fade. Instead, it reshaped her choices. Pamela developed a rebellious streak early on and seemed drawn to danger. She gravitated toward bad boys, toward chaos that felt familiar. Her first serious boyfriend was terrifying. He tried to run her over with his car. On another occasion, he shoved her out of a moving vehicle. Violence followed her like a shadow. So when she finally left her small island town, hoping distance might mean a fresh start, the pattern didn't break. Moving to the mainland felt like stepping into a completely different world. Bigger, louder, overwhelming. She moved in with a new boyfriend, but the relationship collapsed quickly when she discovered he was cheating. Then, unexpectedly, everything changed. In 1989, Pamela Anderson officially left her quiet past behind, without even realizing it at first. She wasn't a football fan. She didn't plan anything life-altering. She simply tagged along to a British Columbia Lions game because a friend had free tickets. Canadian football may have its quirks, 3 downs, 12 players, goalposts planted at the front of the end zone, but the energy in the stadium was just as electric as anywhere else. And like every major sports event, there was a jumbotron scanning the crowd. That day, the camera landed on Pamela. The moment her face filled the massive screen, the crowd erupted. The reaction was so intense that stadium staff brought her down onto the field. While most fans were wearing Labatt beer tees, Pamela stood out instantly. The camera locked onto her, the cheers grew louder, and just like that, she became known as the Blue Zone Girl. That single moment set off a chain reaction. Labatt quickly signed her for a television commercial. That led to a national poster campaign. Then came more ads, more attention, more doors opening. And then came the phone call that changed everything. Playboy wanted Pamela Anderson for the October cover. She said yes immediately, but getting to Los Angeles turned into a disaster. At the airport, caught up in the excitement, she told border officials exactly why she was traveling. As a Canadian without a work visa, she was denied entry on the spot. Most people would have walked away. Pamela didn't. She changed her clothes, went to a different airline, and tried again. She was caught again. With no flights left and time running out, she took her last option, a Greyhound bus. As it rolled toward the border, all she could do was hope. This time she made it through. When Pamela finally stepped into the Playboy mansion, she was stunned. To her, it didn't feel real. It felt like a fairy tale, like walking into a castle pulled straight from a dream. That night, she wrote in her diary that she was lost in amazement. But beneath the wonder, she felt completely out of place. She was suddenly surrounded by celebrities, wealth, and confident women who seemed entirely comfortable in their own skin. Pamela wasn't. She carried deep shame about her body, pain rooted in experiences she had never fully faced. Beyond the abuse she suffered as a child, there was another trauma. When she was just 12, a friend took her to hang out with much older men. Somehow, she ended up alone in a room with a 25-year-old man playing backgammon. What happened next stayed buried for years. He assaulted her, and she told no one. Because it was one of her earliest experiences with men, it left her confused, withdrawn, and deeply self-conscious. That fear followed her into adulthood. So when Pamela stepped onto the set for her first Playboy shoot, it wasn't just a photo shoot. It was a confrontation, a reckoning with years of silence and shame. At first, she was painfully shy, but something shifted. By the end of the week, she felt transformed. She later wrote that she went from hesitant to having to be stopped from running out the door naked. For Pamela, this moment wasn't about fame. It was about reclaiming her body, taking back control. She believed the trip would be a one-time thing. It wasn't. Playboy saw something special immediately. When they offered her the chance to become an official playmate, she didn't hesitate. She moved to Los Angeles with almost nothing, no furniture, no safety net, just a tiny apartment and the sense that her real life was finally about to begin. Hollywood's wildest love story. As Pamela's fame exploded, one of her first real wake-up calls was just how narrowly the world chose to see her. The attention fixated almost entirely on her looks, especially her chest. Interviews kept circling back to her body, and after she chose to get plastic surgery, the noise only got louder. It was overwhelming, constant, and impossible to escape. But Pamela knew she was more than a headline or a silhouette. Her time modeling for Playboy had already taught her how to slip into roles, how to perform. Acting had always been in the back of her mind, even if she didn't yet have the instincts of a seasoned Hollywood strategist. That lack of polish showed when Baywatch came calling. The casting team wanted her badly, but when she heard the audition was in Marina del Rey, she ignored the message altogether. To her, it sounded far away, unfamiliar, and intimidating. Luckily, the producers didn't give up. They knew exactly what they were looking at. When Pamela finally joined the cast, she openly admitted she had no idea what she was doing. Still, once she hit the beach, she had an undeniable presence. None of them realized what was coming. At the time, it just felt like a paid vacation. Long days filming in the sun, laughing with the cast, barely believing it counted as work. Then Baywatch went global. Almost overnight, Pamela Anderson became one of the most recognizable women on the planet. With that level of fame came attention from every direction, including a steady stream of handsome and powerful men. Pamela leaned into romance. She always had. She loved falling in love, even when it led her straight into disappointment. Relationships with men like Kelly Slater and Scott Baio fizzled out, leaving her hurt and unfulfilled. Even Hollywood royalty took notice. One of the biggest stars in the world made her an offer that summed up the era perfectly. A luxury car, a high-end condo, and the promise of being his main girl. Pamela wasn't impressed. The idea that she'd simply be added to a rotation of women offended her. When she turned him down, he warned her that this was how Hollywood worked. She walked away anyway. Despite everything, she still believed in real love. That belief collided headfirst with chaos on New Year's Eve in 1994. While out at a club called Sanctuary with her friend Melanie, Pamela met the ultimate bad boy, Tommy Lee, the wild, unpredictable drummer of Motley Crue. Their first interaction was strange, messy, and unforgettable. A misunderstanding over drinks turned into Tommy crashing into their group and licking Pamela's face. Instead of recoiling, she laughed and played along, turning the moment into a bizarre inside joke that rippled through the group. By the end of the night, after hours of dancing, Pamela was intrigued enough to give him her number. Her friend Melanie was not impressed. She saw the red flags immediately and warned Pamela to stay away. Pamela brushed it off, pretending she didn't understand the concern. Tommy, on the other hand, was hooked. He flooded her answering machine with outrageous, suggestive messages and refused to fade into the background. When their first official date was supposed to happen, he showed up fully committed to his reckless rock star image, doing the bare minimum to get ready and leaning hard into shock value. Pamela almost missed the date entirely. Work consumed her schedule, and she didn't feel bad about letting his calls go unanswered. When she finally picked up, she told him she was busy and heading to Cancun. To her, it was an excuse. To Tommy, it was a challenge. Despite being told not to follow her, he did exactly that. He arrived in Mexico with friends in tow, determined not to be ignored. Pamela eventually gave in and agreed to one night out, likely assuming it would burn itself out just as quickly as it started. Instead, everything intensified. That night felt unreal, loud, fast, intoxicating. Time blurred, emotions surged. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Tommy asked her to marry him. To her own surprise, Pamela said yes. She had never felt a spark like that before. With no ring on hand, Tommy borrowed a large skull ring from a friend and slid it onto her finger. They spent the rest of the night crammed into a booth talking about their future as if it had already begun. 4 days later, they made it official. No ceremony, no long engagement. Just a beach, a bikini, board shorts, and vows exchanged on impulse. Instead of wedding bands, they tattooed each other's names on their ring fingers. The news stunned everyone. Pamela's own mother learned about the marriage by reading it in a magazine. To Pamela, it wasn't reckless. It wasn't about partying or excess. In her mind, it was pure love, raw, passionate, and real. She believed she had finally found her happily ever after. What she hadn't realized was how quickly intensity could turn into instability. The relationship had begun so fast that one awkward detail slipped through the cracks. Pamela hadn't even broken things off with her previous boyfriend until after she was married. It was a messy beginning that foreshadowed what was to come. Once back in Los Angeles, their lives became a non-stop spectacle. Paparazzi swarmed them everywhere. Privacy disappeared completely. In the middle of that chaos, Pamela discovered she was pregnant while filming Barbed Wire. She pushed herself relentlessly. Long days, physically demanding scenes, refusing to slow down. Then one day she arrived on set visibly unwell, pale, shaking. She was rushed to the hospital and learned she had miscarried. The loss devastated both of them. Even leaving the hospital wasn't peaceful. Photographers surrounded their car, flashing cameras in their faces as they tried to escape. Overwhelmed and grieving, Pamela snapped. She lashed out, physically confronting the paparazzi alongside Tommy, who was equally furious. It was an eruption born from pain, not anger. After the miscarriage, Pamela sank into a deep depression. When Barbed Wire failed at the box office, it barely registered. None of it mattered. Hope returned when she became pregnant again. In July 1995, she gave birth to their son, Brandon. For a while, everything softened. They focused on their baby, wrapped in a bubble of happiness. Then one day, Tommy went into the garage and noticed something was missing. The large safe they kept there, filled with sentimental and personal items, had vanished. At first, he hoped it was a mistake. Then a package arrived. Inside was a VHS tape. After watching it, Tommy warned Pamela that what they were about to see would be disturbing. The tape contained footage never meant for anyone else. Intimate, private moments stolen along with the safe. The realization was crushing. Soon after, another letter arrived. This one came with an offer to buy the footage for millions. Pamela and Tommy refused. To them, it wasn't about money. They believed that if they could just recover the original tape, the nightmare would end. They didn't yet understand that this was only the beginning. The scandal that consumed her. The scandal surrounding Pamela Anderson's private life was about to consume everything. The stolen VHS tape didn't quietly slip into the world. It was aggressively sold, advertised, and pushed on a global scale. Overnight, the paparazzi stopped being an inconvenience and became an all-out siege. Pamela and Tommy tried to fight back. They hired legal help and attempted to regain control of what had been taken from them, but the 1997 deposition turned into something deeply traumatizing. Looking back years later, Pamela described it as one of the most humiliating experiences of her life. The legal argument against her was brutally dismissive. Because she had appeared in Playboy, she was told she had effectively surrendered her right to privacy. The idea of consent was ignored entirely. Choosing to pose for a magazine was framed as permission for anything that followed. The questioning grew increasingly harsh, invasive, and relentless, until Pamela reached her limit. She found herself sitting across from a room full of lawyers who seemed determined to break her down. What confused her most was the hostility, the anger directed at her. The depositions dragged on, one after another, until her circumstances changed in a way that forced an impossible decision. Pamela was pregnant, and the stress was becoming dangerous. Fearing for her baby, she and Tommy made the painful choice to walk away from the lawsuit. What they didn't understand at the time was how unstoppable the internet would be. They signed a settlement that handed the copyright of their private home video to an internet businessman named Seth Warshawski. In the moment, they believed it would end the nightmare. Instead, it opened the floodgates. Once the footage went online, it wasn't just duplicated, it exploded. There were no borders, no limits, no way to pull it back. Later, Pamela admitted there was no amount of money that could measure the damage it caused. She agreed to the settlement not because she wanted to, but because she was exhausted. She was 7 months pregnant with her son Dylan, and she refused to sacrifice her health or her child in a courtroom war. She has since said she never watched the video and never made a single dollar from it. To her, it was always stolen property. Signing that agreement was simply a way to make the chaos stop. And just when it seemed impossible for things to get worse, another nightmare surfaced. In 1998, almost immediately after settling the first case, a second private video appeared, this time involving Pamela and her former boyfriend, Brett Michaels. Brett filed an invasion of privacy lawsuit against the company holding the footage, insisting the leak did not come from his side. The situation felt hauntingly familiar. Once again, the trail led back to the same internet distributor, but this time the outcome was different. Unlike the earlier case, Pamela and Brett were able to block the tape from being released. The court ordered all copies destroyed, and the two reportedly received a settlement in the 7-figure range. Even so, enduring a second legal battle, one that stretched into 2001, was draining beyond words. From that point on, Pamela felt her public image never truly recovered. The industry treated her like a punchline. Late-night jokes, tabloid mockery, and cruel commentary followed her everywhere. The double standard was impossible to miss. The scandal only added to Tommy Lee's rebellious rock star myth, while it nearly erased Pamela's career. In hindsight, she believed that was the moment her professional life was effectively over. At the same time, her personal life was unraveling. During her final season on Baywatch, a small incident triggered something terrifying. Pamela hadn't told Tommy about a brief kissing scene with a co-star, and his reaction was explosive. In a fit of rage, he destroyed her trailer on set, ripping it apart and punching through cabinets. His jealousy had become unpredictable and dangerous. Pamela was juggling long workdays and raising 2 young children, and she needed stability. Tommy, however, couldn't stand not being the center of her world. She later described moments where he collapsed on the floor, crying and begging for her attention. But when she asked him to support her and their family, his anger took over. Fearing what might happen next, Pamela made the most difficult call of her life and contacted the police. Tommy was arrested and later charged with abusing Pamela and their children. In her writing, she described the incident in devastating detail, saying he ripped their son from her arms and threw her and their younger child into a wall. The aftermath shattered their family. A restraining order followed, and Tommy was sentenced to 6 months in jail. From behind bars, he sent her letter after letter, hoping to repair what he had broken. But Pamela had reached her breaking point. She filed for divorce, even though it tore her apart to do so. Privately, she admitted she had never loved anyone the way she loved him. She felt as though losing him meant losing a part of herself, and for a brief moment, there was even talk of reconciliation. She once imagined them growing old together, side by side, tattoos and all. That dream didn't survive reality. Tommy's struggle with alcoholism ended any hope of rebuilding what they had. The relationship also left Pamela with lasting physical consequences. She later revealed that she had contracted hepatitis C through contact with Tommy's blood, reportedly from sharing a tattoo needle. She said he knew he had the virus but never told her during their marriage. The diagnosis was terrifying. Hepatitis C can lead to severe liver damage, including cirrhosis and cancer. Pamela lived with the disease for 16 years, carrying that burden quietly as she raised her children and tried to rebuild her life. Eventually, a new treatment became available, and it worked. She was cured, with no permanent liver damage, a result she described as nothing short of a miracle. Free from the illness, and finally living on her own terms, Pamela focused on protecting her children and moving forward, but the past refused to stay buried. As her sons grew older, they began to understand who their parents were and why their family had always lived under a microscope. And every so often the tape resurfaced in public conversation, reopening old wounds, especially when rumors circulated claiming Pamela and Tommy had leaked it themselves for attention. Despite everything, Pamela kept going. She continued searching for peace, for love, for something resembling a fairy tale ending. But after everything she had endured, she understood one painful truth. Happily ever after is far more complicated than it looks. Pamela Anderson is now 58. Look at her after losing all her money. By 2005, Pamela Anderson was riding a wave very few people ever experience. That year, the CBC named her the most powerful Canadian in Hollywood. And it wasn't just hype. She was reportedly earning around $300,000 per television episode while juggling a growing list of side projects. There were book deals, a widely read advice column, high-profile commercial work. She was everywhere at once. Since breaking out on Baywatch in the 1990s, Pamela had racked up more than 50 acting credits. Her image was firmly locked into pop culture. Years of Playboy covers, relentless media attention, and the fallout from her private life had cemented her as one of the most recognizable in the world. At the same time, she had become a lasting beauty icon, instantly identifiable, impossible to ignore. But behind the scenes, the story was far from glamorous. What followed wasn't just heartbreak or bad relationships. It was a financial unraveling that hit hard and reshaped her life. In 2008, Pamela bought a home at 23445 Malibu Colony Road, a property she planned to turn into her dream house. She paid around $1.8 million and brought in a well-known architect and designer to reimagine the space from top to bottom. The vision was ambitious. The spending was even more so. As the renovations grew more elaborate, the costs spiraled. Luxury upgrades piled on, including expensive design choices that pushed the project far beyond its original budget. By 2009, the situation had turned serious. Several construction companies filed liens against the property after their bills went unpaid. One invoice alone, covering labor, remodeling work, the pool, and the guest house foundation, topped $670,000. A lien, in simple terms, meant the house itself became leverage. If the debts weren't paid, the property could be used to recover the money. Just a year later, Pamela shocked a lot of people by moving into a one-bedroom mobile home in a modest trailer park. On paper, it looked like a dramatic fall, but she didn't see it that way. She described the community as peaceful and supportive, a place where she and her 2 sons could breathe for a while. Even as she lived simply, she tried to make the Malibu house work financially. In 2011, she listed it as a luxury rental, asking an eye-watering $75,000 a month. The price dropped to $50,000 the following year. Whether anyone ever rented it remains unclear. By 2013, she decided to sell, listing the property for $7.75 million. It still didn't move. For years, the house sat in limbo. She attempted to rent it again in 2017 at the same monthly price, but nothing stuck. Finally, in August 2021, she caught a break. The home sold for $11.8 million, allowing her to close that chapter for good. After the sale, she relocated permanently to Vancouver, returning to her roots in Canada. At the same time, another long-running issue followed her everywhere: taxes. Pamela's troubles with tax authorities first became public in 2009, when reports revealed she owed more than $250,000 in unpaid California state taxes and penalties from 2007. Instead of shrinking, the debt grew. By 2010, her balance had climbed to nearly $500,000. The situation escalated further when she was hit with a lien totaling about $1.7 million, landing her on California's list of top delinquent taxpayers. Even in Hollywood, that kind of spotlight is brutal. The pressure didn't ease. In 2012, new claims surfaced for the 2011 tax year, with hundreds of thousands owed between federal and state authorities. Moving back to Canada didn't erase the problem either. In 2013, reports surfaced that she also owed property taxes on her home in Ladysmith. Later that year, Pamela finally addressed the situation publicly. She confirmed the debts were real but said she was paying them down gradually. Without placing direct blame, she described the mess as a strange and complicated situation involving a former business manager. As for where she stands now, the picture is quieter. When she briefly married producer John Peters in 2020, he claimed he helped clear a portion of her outstanding bills during their short-lived union. Despite years of financial turbulence, Pamela Anderson is still estimated to be worth around $20 million.